welcome to Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. As Taylor Swift, as her devoted fan base knows all too well, is a once-in-a-generation talent. Since Taylor Swift, her self-titled debut in 2006, her celebrity has developed a fearless reputation as an economic, cultural, and social force for whatever she sings or speaks about now and forevermore. A lover of Taylor Swift is known as a Swiftie. In 2023, that term was entered in the Oxford Dictionary of English as an enthusiastic fan of the singer Taylor Swift. A recent paper published by two UVM nutrition professors in the journal Social Science and Medicine analyzes Swift's influence on her fans and their relationship with food, body image, and mental health. Joining me to talk about Swift, celebrity, and body image are Lizzy Pope and Kelsey Rose. They're faculty members in the UVM Department of Nutrition and Food Science, and they're co-authors of the article, It's All Just Effing Impossible, The Influence of Taylor Swift on Fans' Body Image, Disordered Eating, and the Rejection of Diet Culture. That sounds like quite a provocative title for a study, but why don't you both tell me how you even got interested in this in the first place? Why don't you start?
Well, I'm a Swiftie, and so I had seen discourse online of fans of Taylor Swift reacting to her disclosures in her Miss Americana documentary around her struggles with eating disorders and body image. So I was noticing this happening online, and at the same time, we both have students who have been big fans of Taylor Swift, especially this past year. And so we thought maybe it's important to see how fans react to Taylor's relationship with food and body.
Is it the same for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think also just to add, because we have, we're within the university, we know that that age group is the most susceptible to some of these like dieting practices and disordered eating behaviors, especially with the influence of social media. So we were really interested in seeing what messages our students were getting around these concepts related to Taylor Swift.
Mm-hmm. And this is for both of you as well, but Lizzy, let's start with you. Let's talk about, before we get into all of this, what we're even meaning when we say disordered eating or body image.
Yeah, so actually that's a great question for Kelsey.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. So I like to think of eating behaviors along a spectrum, just like anything else that we think of. And disordered eating is definitely closer to having a disordered relationship with food, right? So it's closer to eating disorders on that spectrum. It usually involves a unhealthy weight control behavior. So when we say that, we think of things like skipping meals, fasting, misuse of diuretics or laxatives, purging, those sort of behaviors. And a lot of people talk about eating disorders and disordered eating being different, and they are, because disordered eating doesn't meet maybe that full threshold in terms of frequency of behaviors, but it's important to understand that it doesn't mean the behaviors are any less harmful or severe. It just has to do with that frequency. So that's what we think about when we think about disordered eating. And then body image, the way that I talk about it with my students is really this like relationship to body. So it's the way we like perceive, think, feel, and behave with our bodies. So it's important to understand how those two intersect in the way that body image, when we think about behavior, disordered eating is like a behavior that you utilize when you have a negative body image. And that's an important thing too to notice, is that body image also occurs along a spectrum. You can have positive, neutral, or negative perceptions, feelings, and behaviors around your body.
And you've studied this before, and in previous research you've said that women have reported that celebrities have a pretty big impact on their personal body image. So this is kind of nothing new, but how is Taylor Swift different?
Yeah, I really appreciated this highlighting our research in this way, because like you said, when we look at previous research, we do see that celebrity disclosures show that actually there's a negative impact on these health disclosures and their fan bases. And what was so unique about our research was that what we found was that Taylor Swift's disclosures actually had a positive impact on actually all individuals. We don't know entirely how much they were fan based. Like, there are some Swifties, but it's anyone who was using that social media. Mm-hmm. But we saw the opposite of previous research. So we saw that Taylor Swift's disclosures had a positive impact on decreasing disordered eating and fostering a positive body image. And that was just really unique from the other research that we had seen.
And Lizzy, you saw the same outcome?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And Taylor Swift's fan base is doing kind of what fan bases do, and a lot of the time following the lead of the person they they love or follow or even idealize. And that's something in a parasocial relationship. First, can you tell us what that even means?
Yeah, so a parasocial relationship is a relationship that a fan might have with a celebrity. So you don't know them personally, but you feel like you know them. And so we know that Taylor Swift is an expert at fostering relationships with her fans. She responds to their online posts. She plants little hints about what she's going to do next that people can go search out. So she builds this relationship with her fans that can make people feel like they know her or know how she's feeling, even when they don't know her at all.
And what was the impact of that kind of relationship in your research and your findings?
Well, we think that the parasocial relationship that Taylor had with her fans, or that has developed between fans, is that actually helped fans with their own relationship with food and body, because they saw Taylor as a role model. And so they saw that she had struggled with disordered eating, and they felt like, she struggled and she's talked about that, and she's talked about her journey through that struggle, and so maybe I can also get through my own issues with disordered eating and body image. So we saw it kind of utilized to be very positive, the parasocial relationship.
And now let's get into how the study was kind of conducted. Can you tell me a little bit about where you got your research, Lizzy?
Sure, yeah. So what we did was we looked at TikTok and Reddit posts related to Taylor Swift and body image or eating disorders. So TikTok is a video-based platform and Reddit is a more text-based platform. And so we did searches on both of those platforms for these keywords, Taylor Swift, body image, eating disorder, and we pulled all of those posts, and then we analyzed them and their associated comments as well to try to get a sense of how people were reacting to Taylor's disclosures or her music around these themes.
And it sounds like you kind of shared the burden of that, but Kelsey, why don't you start by telling us how much time did this take?
I don't actually know the total time, but it was during our winter break that we were working on it. So we would meet in one of the like larger rooms in our department building and put it up on a huge projection screen and just watch videos, go through the content, code using the code book we had developed, and then also read through all of the comments. How many hours do you think we did?
A lot of hours.
A lot of hours. Yeah, we had like 4 hours like sessions. Yeah.
It's really important to have two people look at all of the content, because how I interpret it could be different than how Kelsey interprets it, but we need to come to a consensus.
Yeah.
So you always want to have two opinions.
And it's not just video, it was also comments, is that right? How did that change anything? Do you go through a lot of those as well, add a lot more time?
Yeah, exactly. We went through all the comments. I think it was something like 18,000 comments or something all told, so it's quite a few comments. Some are really short, but others were like dissertations.
Very verbose.
Very verbose.
Yeah.
And I think you were saying before you have somewhat different previous relationships with Taylor Swift, so why don't you each tell me what you maybe learned from Swift talk? Why don't you start, Kelsey?
Yeah, honestly, I was really surprised by some of our results. We started this off and it was like a fun project that we were going to do. But I've worked as a clinician in eating disorder treatment. And so when we started seeing a lot of fans disclosing, or I guess like content, not necessarily fans, disclosing how how Taylor Swift's disclosure had impacted their ability to recover or like desire to recover, that kind of blew my mind, because working with a patient like one-on-one, you know, you're really like going through the trenches trying to help people see another way of living. And it was so interesting that Taylor Swift could be that person. I just like gained a lot of respect for her, honestly.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
for you, Lizzy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess because I am already a Taylor Swift fan, I was maybe less surprised, but still the passion with which the fans spoke about Taylor and some of the way that they would speak about how inspired they were was really impactful. So I think that was, I mean, similar to Kelsey's.
Yeah, I think the other thing I want to add is like, I think role models are so important, and I've always thought mentorship is important. Like through academia, we do a lot of that, and I think just as like females, we try to all like mentor each other, and that also stood out to me as like, not only do I feel like mentorship is important, like role modeling and having a positive like person to look up to does change like the way you feel about yourself and your capabilities.
And you were also not just looking through video on TikTok, but you also looked through Reddit and subreddits, which are more of a text format. Can you tell me about what that was like?
Yeah, well, on Reddit, people could really explain their thinking quite a bit more than TikTok. So TikToks are short, and video based, but with Reddit you could write pages and pages around how this had impacted you, and we saw some of that.
Yeah, we saw
and
a
then
lot of
also on Reddit there was more like back and forth between fans, so the comments, one fan would comment and then another fan would respond to that comment, and they would kind of have a dialogue. So that was another difference that we saw on Reddit.
All right, and what kind of themes do you think emerged from the research?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest themes we saw was this theme of being a role model. So Taylor Swift as a role model for recovery or for thinking about your body differently. So that was really exciting to see. But we also saw that fans were still objectifying her body. So even though she had asked fans, like, please stop objectifying my body, please stop talking about my body, fans would still, even when they were trying to be positive, they would say like, oh, she looks so great right now, which sounds like a compliment, but it's still looking at her body and making a judgment about it. And so we saw this theme of objectification still carry through. And then we saw some struggles that fans were having with larger concepts like systemic anti-fat bias. So they had a hard time understanding that you might make an artistic choice that reflects your journey through an eating disorder, but it might still exhibit anti-fat bias. And so we didn't see that Taylor's individual disclosures helped fans to really understand these larger concepts, like how anti-fat bias is such a big deal in our society today. Kelsey?
Yeah, the other thing I would mention is some of the lyrics that we saw. So fans, or I guess like the content that we saw was just that individuals felt like the lyrics that she said were very relatable. And that's another thing that we've talked about around like her role modeling and the impact that we feel like she has, or like how she's done such a good job to create that parasocial relationship, is she is approachable and relatable to a lot of individuals. And maybe not in like the physical presentation of who she is and how she looks, but the way she writes. Like, I think a lot of people can relate to the words that she, or her lyrics that she produces.
All right, we're actually almost out of time, but Kelsey, you mentioned before that there were a few factors that you couldn't really account for in this research, including maybe the depth of somebody's parasocial bond, or even some demographic factors. Is this study you want to keep doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's hard. The internet and social media is such a wealth of information, and obviously you can't get demographic information from that. I think one of the biggest takeaways I learned from this research was that researchers do a lot of important work, and when we are able to connect it to current culture, then like our general audience expands greatly. So I think it's really important. I think we've both discussed this, that our research continues in a way that we can talk about these important issues in a way that our audience can actually hear about them.
All right, thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that takes care of our program for today. We want to give a special shout out to Claire Silva, the daughter of our producer. As a Swiftie, Claire made sure we left no blank spaces in our script. And my thanks to the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX. I'm Jolie Whitney. Have a good one.